Sylvester Stallone was insulted, humiliated, and thrown out, all before he could even finish a single sentence. When Stallone stepped into Donovan's Fine Gems, dressed in simple clothes, the staff didn't see a Hollywood legend. They saw a man they believed wasn't worth their time. A salesman laughed right in his face, mocking his old sneakers and faded hoodie. Stallone calmly asked to see a sapphire necklace for his daughter's birthday, but the insults only grew sharper. They didn't just turn him away, they made sure he left feeling worthless. What they didn't know was that the man they had dismissed was about to teach them the most unforgettable lesson of their lives. The store sat proudly on Rodeo Drive in the heart of Beverly Hills, sparkling like a treasure chest under the California sun. Rows of glass cases displayed dazzling necklaces, massive diamond rings, and rare gemstones, each piece worth more than most people's yearly salary. Behind the main counter stood Todd Whitmore, a senior salesman who prided himself on spotting a real customer from 50 yards away. When he saw Stallone, he barely suppressed a sneer. He looked him over, the plain clothes, the rough beard, the worn shoes, and adjusted his expensive silk tie before stepping forward with a smug, patronizing smile. "Sir, can I help you find the exit?" he said, his voice dripping with contempt. Stallone nodded politely, unfazed. "Actually, I'm looking for a birthday gift for my daughter. Maybe a sapphire pendant or a delicate chain." Across the showroom, a few other salespeople exchanged smirks and stifled laughs. Todd didn't bother hiding his sneer. He tilted his head and folded his arms. "Unless you're here to browse our cleaning cloths, I think you might be in the wrong place," he said. Stallone remained calm, his gravelly voice even. "I just want to take a quick look. Something simple but meaningful." Todd's smirk only grew crueler. "Let's be clear, buddy. The cheapest piece in this store starts at $12,000. You don't look like you could afford a shoelace here, let alone a necklace." His voice now echoed across the gleaming marble showroom. Other customers paused, pretending not to listen, though their side glances said otherwise. The sting of humiliation crept up Stallone's neck, but he stood firm. "Next week is my daughter's 27th birthday. She's overcome some tough odds. I want to get her something special," he said, his tone low but unwavering. Todd laughed, a harsh barking sound that bounced off the marble floor. "Unless you've got a winning lottery ticket tucked into those rags, maybe try Walmart down the block. Or better yet, save yourself the walk. You're wasting everyone's time here." Stallone's hands tightened slightly at his sides, but he forced himself to relax. This wasn't a battle worth fighting. Not here, not now. But Todd wasn't done. "Look, pal," he continued, his voice turning openly hostile. "Whatever fantasy you're living, you couldn't even dream of buying a charm bracelet from this place. Don't make a scene. Walk out while you still have a shred of dignity left." Stallone stared straight into Todd's eyes for a long moment. No anger, no retort. Just a cold, steady calm that unsettled Todd more than any outburst could have. Stallone gave a short nod, turned without another word, and headed for the door. As he reached it, he heard Todd mutter just loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Pathetic. Probably some washed-up has-been trying to feel important." The words cut, not because they were true, but because they embodied the kind of casual cruelty Stallone had spent a lifetime rising above. The store buzzed with embarrassed whispers as the heavy door closed behind him. Stallone stepped back into the sunlight, pulled the brim of his cap lower over his eyes, and walked quietly down Rodeo Drive, disappearing into the morning crowd. What Todd didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that they had just insulted one of Hollywood's most enduring legends. The man who had once written the script for Rocky with nothing but a dream and a few dollars to his name. The man who had fought for every inch of his career. The man who, even now in his 70s, still possessed more strength, resilience, and resources than they could possibly imagine. And Sylvester Stallone wasn't the kind of man to let a lesson like that slip by without a response. That evening, at their home in Hidden Hills, Stallone recounted the day's experience to his wife, Jennifer Flavin. They sat at a rustic oak table, a fire crackling nearby, soft jazz playing from old speakers tucked into the corners of the cozy room. Jennifer listened quietly, her features tightening with each word. When he finished, she set her wine glass down carefully and met his gaze. "You should go back," she said, her voice firm but steady. "No, not that. Just remind them, without saying a word." Stallone leaned back, the idea taking root immediately. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to demand an apology. The best lessons were often the quiet ones, the ones that made people rethink everything they thought they knew, the ones that lingered long after the moment had passed. He nodded slowly, a plan forming. "Yeah," he said, his voice low and certain. "Tomorrow. Let's make it a birthday they'll never forget." And so the next morning, the sun rose once again over Beverly Hills, casting long golden shadows across Rodeo Drive. The shops glittered in the new day's light, the sidewalks alive with wealthy shoppers and curious tourists. Right at 10 a.m., a low, resonant purr of an engine drew every eye on the street. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, long wheelbase model in onyx black, pulled up in front of Donovan's Fine Gems. This wasn't just any Rolls-Royce. It gleamed with custom chrome trim, bespoke leather interiors, and subtle platinum stitching, the kind of vehicle that cost more than a luxury condo in downtown Los Angeles. The kind of vehicle no one could ignore. A uniformed driver stepped out first, pristine white gloves in place, and circled around to open the rear passenger door. And from that door, Sylvester Stallone stepped out. But not the man in the hoodie and sneakers they had sneered at the day before. Today he was every inch the Hollywood icon, a tailored navy Tom Ford suit, crisp white shirt, gleaming Italian leather loafers. His salt and pepper hair was combed neatly back, his posture straight and commanding. A sleek Vacheron Constantin watch peeked out from beneath his cuff, a quiet but undeniable symbol of wealth and status. He carried himself like a man who belonged to a world most people could only dream of. Inside Donovan's, Todd Whitmore looked up at the commotion and felt his stomach sink into his expensive leather shoes. Because now there was no mistaking him, not a wanderer, not a dreamer wasting their time. It was Sylvester Stallone, a living legend, a multimillionaire, a man who had built an empire from sheer grit, determination, and talent. And he was walking straight back into their store. Sylvester Stallone pushed open the glass door of Donovan's Fine Gems without hesitation. The bell chimed again, but this time the sound seemed to slice through the air like a blade. Every head in the room turned, conversations cutting off mid-sentence as people took in the commanding figure entering the store. Stallone didn't rush. He moved with the slow, deliberate confidence of a man who had climbed mountains, fought battles, and outlasted every voice that ever told him he couldn't. His presence filled the space before he even spoke a word. Todd Whitmore stood frozen behind the counter, his mouth half open, an awkward, nervous smile trying and failing to form on his face. Claire, the senior saleswoman, who had laughed along the day before, quickly ducked behind a display case, pretending to adjust a tray of emerald earrings. The store manager, a silver-haired man named Gregory Chase, spotted the commotion from his office and emerged quickly, smoothing down his expensive blazer as he hurried over. "Good morning, sir," Gregory said, his voice overly bright, masking the undercurrent of panic beneath. "Welcome to Donovan's. It's an honor to have you with us." Stallone gave a polite nod, his expression unreadable. He let his gaze drift slowly over the cases, the staff, the faces that only yesterday had judged him so harshly. He didn't need to raise his voice. His silence spoke volumes. Gregory, desperate to regain control, motioned toward Todd. "This is Todd Whitmore, one of our senior associates. He'll be more than happy to assist you personally today." Todd swallowed hard, his palms suddenly slick with sweat. Yesterday's bravado was gone, replaced by a tight, anxious grimace. Stallone allowed a beat of heavy silence before he finally spoke. "I came in yesterday," he said, his gravelly voice low and steady. "Asked about a pendant for my daughter. Didn't seem like anyone had time to help me." His words hung in the air, heavy and cold. Todd shifted uncomfortably, trying to find some excuse, some escape. "Sir, I wasn't aware it was you," he stammered, voice cracking slightly. We get a lot of people coming in just to browse, wasting time." Stallone cut him off with a single raised hand. "You judged me before I even said 10 words. Thought you knew my worth by looking at my shoes." Todd's face flushed bright red. Around them, the other staff members stood awkwardly, pretending to straighten displays or check their tablets, but every ear was tuned to the confrontation. Gregory laughed nervously. "We deeply regret any misunderstanding, Mr. Stallone. Of course, we'd be honored to help you today. Please, allow us to show you our finest collection." "Of course, we'd be honored to help you today. Please, allow us to show you our finest collection." Stallone tilted his head slightly, studying Gregory the way a fighter sizes up an opponent in the ring. "Not looking for finest. I'm looking for heart," he said. "Something simple, something real. You got anything like that?" Gregory blustered, scrambling to respond. But Stallone had already started walking past the main counter, his eyes scanning the cases thoughtfully. Every step he took felt deliberate, each pause carefully measured. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't trying to punish them with anger or loud accusations. He was teaching them a lesson they would never forget. At one case, he stopped. Inside lay a sapphire pendant, small, elegant, set in a delicate white gold chain, the very kind of piece he had asked about the day before. Without looking up, Stallone said quietly, "This one." "How much?" Todd, still rooted to the spot, barely managed to croak out, $34,000, sir." Stallone nodded slowly. "Good, I'll take it." There was a stunned pause. Gregory blinked rapidly. "Certainly, sir. We can prepare the paperwork immediately." Stallone finally looked up, his gaze piercing straight through Todd and the manager alike. "Cash," he said simply. A fresh ripple of tension ran through the room. Gregory laughed again, a thin, strained sound. "Of course, sir. Of course. However you prefer." Stallone reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced a slim black money clip. He pulled out a thick stack of crisp hundreds and set them calmly on the glass counter. "Count it," he said. Todd's hands shook slightly as he reached for the money, his face a shade paler than before. As Todd fumbled with the bills, Stallone turned toward the other customers in the store, many of whom had gathered in silent, curious clusters. He caught the eye of a middle-aged woman near the entrance, dressed in modest clothes, clutching a small leather purse and looking intimidated by the luxury all around her. Stallone gave her a slight nod, a gesture of solidarity, and her face lit up with a shy, grateful smile. He understood her. He had been her once. Gregory hurried back with the receipt and a velvet box, practically tripping over himself in his eagerness. "All set, sir," he said breathlessly. "We also included a complimentary cleaning service and a certificate of authenticity for your daughter's gift." Stallone took the box without a word, slid it into the inner pocket of his suit jacket, and then turned to face Todd one last time. "Next time someone walks through that door, maybe remember," he said, his voice steady but firm. "Character's not measured by clothes or shoes or wallets. It's what's inside that counts." Todd opened his mouth as if to respond, but found no words. Gregory stood stiffly beside him, wringing his hands. Stallone tipped his head slightly in acknowledgement to the rest of the store, and then turned, pushing through the door into the bright California sunlight. Outside, his Rolls-Royce Phantom waited, the engine humming low and powerful. His driver stepped forward and opened the door with a respectful nod. Stallone slid into the back seat without looking back. As the Phantom pulled away from the curb, a few onlookers gathered, murmuring excitedly, snapping photos, their voices blending into the warm morning air. "Was that really him?" someone whispered. "That was Stallone, man. Rocky. The real deal." Inside Donovan's, the atmosphere was brittle, embarrassed. Gregory turned on Todd with a fury barely contained behind his tight smile. "You idiot," he hissed under his breath. "Do you realize who you just insulted yesterday? That man could buy this entire building without blinking." Todd didn't answer. He simply stared at the door, face flushed with a cocktail of shame and regret. He had misjudged a giant, thinking he was a nobody. And the worst part? He hadn't just lost a sale. He had lost something far more valuable: his pride, his certainty, his belief that appearances told the whole story. Sylvester Stallone didn't need to say much to teach a lesson. His life, his history, his simple, dignified presence had spoken louder than any speech ever could. And somewhere deep down, Todd knew he would never, ever forget it. The following week, Rodeo Drive buzzed with the usual rhythm of wealth and spectacle. But inside Donovan's Fine Gems, the atmosphere remained tense, almost cautious. Word had spread faster than wildfire. Clients whispered about it over brunch at the Ivy. Staff at neighboring boutiques swapped knowing glances, and even the local concierge services knew. Donovan's had insulted Sylvester Stallone, and the world noticed. Gregory Chase, the manager, spent his mornings drafting apology emails he never sent, pacing behind his glass office walls, while the staff treaded carefully, each smile a little more forced, each greeting a little more desperate. Sales had dipped slightly. Regular clients hesitated before booking appointments. A few VIPs quietly canceled scheduled viewings altogether. Reputation was everything on Rodeo Drive, and Donovan's once pristine name had taken a blow that no glittering diamond could polish away. One afternoon, just as the sun began its lazy descent over the Pacific, casting long golden rays through the polished windows, A delivery man arrived at the door. Dressed in a crisp uniform, he wheeled in a tall stack of packages, each one meticulously wrapped in silver paper and tied with deep blue ribbons. Gregory hurried over, bewildered. "What's this?" he asked. The delivery man handed him a cream-colored envelope, heavy with thick parchment, embossed with the initials SS in elegant script. Inside was a short note, written in Stallone's unmistakable hand. "For the staff of Donovan's Fine Gems, a reminder that greatness often wears humble clothes. Wishing you a future filled with open eyes and open hearts. Respectfully, Sylvester Stallone." Gregory's hands trembled slightly as he read the words aloud to the gathered staff. The room fell silent, each person digesting the message. Slowly, they began opening the packages. Inside each was a signed copy of Stallone's autobiography, Sly Moves, with a personal inscription tailored to different members of the staff. For Todd, it read simply, "To Todd, remember, every champion was once doubted. Every mistake is a chance to rise stronger. Keep punching, Sly." Todd sat down heavily on the nearest velvet stool, the book resting in his lap like a weight far greater than its size. For the first time in days, he felt something break loose inside him. Not shame this time, but gratitude. It would have been easy for Stallone to crush him with wealth, mock him with power, or embarrass him publicly. Instead, he had chosen kindness, the kind of kindness that demanded reflection, not revenge. Across the room, Claire wiped at her eyes, pretending to fix her mascara. The other staff members stood quietly, the usual hum of luxury salesmanship absent, replaced by something far more rare on Rodeo Drive: humility. Later that evening, long after the last customer had left and the heavy glass doors were locked for the night, Todd remained in the store, sitting beneath the glow of the chandelier that threw fractured rainbows across the marble floor. The streets outside darkened into evening, the neon reflections of nearby boutiques dancing faintly across the windows. He opened the autobiography to the first page and began to read. Stallone's words weren't polished or perfect. They were raw, honest, filled with grit and setbacks and hard-won victories. Todd found pieces of himself between the pages, the insecurity masked by arrogance, the quick judgments born from fear, the dreams too long buried under cynicism. The next morning, Todd requested a meeting with Gregory. They sat stiffly in the office, while Todd cleared his throat and struggled to find the right words. Finally, he said, "I want to offer a formal apology, sir. To Mr. Stallone, to the store, to the team. I lost sight of what matters." Gregory leaned back in his chair, studying the younger man carefully. "Words are fine, Todd," he said, "but if you really want to make it right, you need to live it." Todd nodded, accepting the truth. "I know," he said. "I'm ready." That day, Donovan's began to change. Not dramatically at first, but in subtle, significant ways. Staff training was revamped. Policies shifted. Gregory even invited a series of guest speakers, veterans, entrepreneurs, teachers, people from all walks of life, to share their stories with the staff, reminding everyone that appearances meant nothing without the weight of real character behind them. For Todd, the shift was personal. He stopped sizing people up by their shoes or their watches. He started asking real questions, listening with genuine curiosity. When a tired mother wandered into the store one afternoon, her jeans dusty and her purse fraying at the seams, Todd greeted her with the same warmth he once reserved only for those wearing Chanel. When she revealed she was shopping for a simple pendant to celebrate surviving her first year cancer-free, Todd didn't dismiss her. He listened. He found her a piece. Not the most expensive, but the one that sparkled when she smiled at it. She left the store beaming, clutching her little white box like it contained the world. A few weeks later, Donovan's received an invitation in a heavy envelope bearing another familiar signature. Stallone was hosting a charity gala at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, raising funds for underprivileged youth programs in Los Angeles. The invite wasn't addressed to the owner or the top salesperson. It was addressed to the entire staff of Donovan's Fine Gems. Every single one of them. Todd stared at the invitation for a long time, feeling a strange swell in his chest. Something he hadn't felt. Pride. On the night of the gala, the grand ballroom glittered with chandeliers and laughter. Celebrities mingled with activists. Entrepreneurs shared drinks with retired teachers, and nobody cared who wore what brand of suit. It was a night built on stories, on shared humanity, on the quiet power of perseverance. Todd, Claire, Gregory, and the rest of the Donovan's team arrived together, slightly awkward at first, but soon swept up in the warmth and generosity that filled the room. Stallone stood at the center of it all, not on a pedestal, not behind velvet ropes, but right among the people, laughing, listening, hugging old friends. When Todd finally approached him, heart pounding, Stallone smiled that crooked, familiar smile and clapped him on the shoulder. "Good to see you here, Todd," he said. No malice, no sarcasm, just a simple, genuine welcome. Todd managed to choke out a thank you, and in that moment, something inside him healed. Not because Stallone had forgiven him, but because he had shown him the way to forgive himself. As the night wore on and the music rose, Todd found himself laughing, talking, feeling lighter than he had in years. Across the room, he spotted a young man in worn boots and a simple suit, lingering uncertainly near the auction tables, looking every bit the outsider Todd himself had once mistaken as invisible. Without hesitation, Todd crossed the room, extended a hand, and said, "Hey, welcome. Let me show you around." Because that was the true lesson Sylvester Stallone had left behind. That greatness wasn't about the price of your shoes, or the cut of your suit, or the gleam of your car. It was about how you treated the world when no one was watching. It was about seeing the invisible, lifting up the unseen, and remembering that the greatest victories weren't won with fists or fame, but with kindness. Quiet, unshakable, real. And somewhere deep in the heart of Beverly Hills, a small corner of Rodeo Drive learned to shine a little differently, not just with diamonds, but with dignity.